Hi everyone, welcome to this session. I'm Piyush. I'm going to be your main host today. So before I proceed, I would quickly like to know if all of you can hear me loud and clear. So if you guys can hear me properly, then please let me know in the poll over here. If you can hear me properly, just let me know in the poll and I will get to know if my voice is audible to you. Okay, I do see some yeses, but there are some no's as well. So please let me know, guys. I'm gonna keep this poll live for like 10 more seconds maybe. Just let me know if you can hear me properly, guys. That way I will know that we are good to go ahead with the session and I can get started. So do let me know, guys, if you can hear me loud and clear in this poll over here. And in the meantime, I'm gonna also start sharing my screen, so that way you guys can also see the presentation that we are going to use today for the discussion. So over here, I'm just sharing my screen now. So you should be able to see the screen as well. So guys, I see about 72% of you saying that you guys can hear me loud and clear. About 27% if you are saying that my audio is not clear to you. So I'm just gonna check once more if there is a issue with my audio, but I don't think that would be the case, because otherwise a lot of others will not be able to hear me. But yeah, it seems like most of you can hear me, so I'm gonna end the poll. So those of you who have trouble hearing me, I would recommend you to kind of join the session again. Sometimes it could be because of an internet issue, and if you rejoin, it's just like restarting something and that starts working all of a sudden. So a warm welcome to all of you guys once again to this webinar. This webinar is going to be very different, very special, where we are going to talk about how to create a perfect action plan for GMAT so that you can get to that 750 score in the very first attempt, basically. So that is what this webinar is going to talk about. And this webinar, those of you are aware, this webinar is a part of our free webinar series that we are running now, where we are going to take you through for the next basically 5 weeks 10 different topics on verbal content and strategy, which will help you decode how to get to the 750 plus score in the very first attempt. So this series is something which is very unique, very special. We will try to cover different strategies with quant, with respect to verbal, with respect to overall prep, so that you get a very good idea about the entire preparation model that is required to be followed in order to get to the 750 plus. And the best way to start with this is to help you understand what is the best study plan to kind of start with. So in case you guys, any one of you has not registered for this webinar series, I'm gonna give you the link in the chat. So the link is in the chat. This is a Google Doc. You can fill this, and do fill your phone number as well if you want to receive notification on WhatsApp as well whenever the session starts. So you can join this, just fill this form if you have not filled it already, and you will get notifications for all the sessions. So it's going to be very interesting. Tomorrow at the same time, we have a session from Sunita Singhvi, our lead verbal expert on verb tenses, which is one of the most complex areas when it comes to sentence correction. Okay, so A has a point. A says, I understand about involved and evolved reading, but I'm still not increasing my score in verbal. So A, I would definitely like to have an interaction with you and see why you are not increasing your score. See, again, in many cases, it is not just enough to know what involved and evolved reading is. It is also important that you are able to apply it properly. So in case you guys, any of one of you is interested in basically connecting with me, you can use this link and connect with me. I've just shared a link in the chat, so you guys can use this link to connect over a phone call with me in case you're interested. So I would recommend you to book a call, so that way I will be able to understand, see where exactly your problem area is, and then accordingly help you. Okay, so without any further ado, let's get going into the session. So basically, a quick intro about myself. Some of you might not have interacted with me. So I'm Piyush. I'm going to be your main host in the session today. I have 9+ years of experience of mentoring students targeting B schools from tier 1 schools globally. And I've helped people get into any top B school that you can think of, whether it is Harvard, Wharton, Stanford, NYU, Stern, any top B school you think of. I have definitely sent 1 or 2 students over there. Prepared as well as taught for GMAT and CAT, and I've scored a 740 on GMAT in my very first attempt with a quant 50 and a verbal 41, and a 99.9 percentile on CAT. CAT is basically Indian test, which is required for Indian MBA colleges. I like analyzing data and trends to come up with certain strategies, and this webinar is gonna be full of a lot of different strategies, basically. Okay, so I would like to know about you guys as well. So I'm going to give you a poll and I want you to select one of these 4 options from the poll. What I want to understand is exactly at which stage of your prep are you at present. Okay, so let me know in the poll. I'm gonna just get the poll for you guys. So I'm gonna just have 1, 2, 3, 4 in the poll. You know what 1, 2, 3, 4 starts from for basically means from this screen. So choose one in the poll if you are someone who is yet to start their prep or have been preparing for less than basically 30 days. Choose 2 if you're someone who has prepared for 1 or 2 months. Basically, choose 3 if you have been preparing for anywhere between 3 to 6 months, and choose 4 if you have been preparing for more than 6 months. Okay. So Randy says the picture is a little bit blurred. Is it the same with other people? I don't think the issue should be at my end because I'm on a 200 Mbps connection and it seems to be working fine. So please try and check once more with your internet connection, or maybe even try rejoining the session. So Karina, I'm going to talk about the quant session as well. And Ishita, the video webinar is going to be recorded and the recording will be shared with all the people who have registered for this webinar series. Okay. So Karina says the picture is clear. Thank you so much for chiming in, Karina. I was hoping the same. So maybe Randy, you can join the session again or look at your internet connection, internet speed. If it is fine, then it should be all clear at your end as well. Okay, so I do have a significant number of responses. Let's wait for 10 more seconds, guys, for more responses. If more responses come, let's look at 10 more seconds and then we can get going basically with our session. Let's look at 10 more seconds. All right. So let's end the poll now. Okay, so I see about 40% of you are basically from group 1, which is yet to start or has been preparing for less than 30 days. 28% of you are group 2. So basically, if I look at the total percentage, about 70% of people belong in one of these 2 categories. And generally, if you have been preparing for less than 2 months, I assume you are fresh starter only. Okay, and there are about 30% of you who have been preparing for a decent amount of time, as in more than 3 months basically. So since a big part of this session, a big part of the the attendees of the session are new people, I'm going to actually run you through, guys, about some basic stuff again, about some important things, overview for beginners, because I know in beginners mind there are a lot of questions about how the entire GMAT thing works, how the entire application process works. So what I'm going to help you understand very quickly, and again, this part which I'm going to tell you is very big. Again, you could have tons of questions around this, but let me set the context correctly. The discussion is not about the points that I'm going to mention right now. Like, the discussion is more around the study plan that we have to create. So this overview which I'm giving for beginners is just for your information purpose, so that you kind of get a bit decent understanding of things. So I'm not going to entertain a lot of queries around this, because then I will our focus will shift away from the main part of the session. Okay, so I'm going to give you a brief overview just to give you an idea about what kind of planning you should be doing with respect to your applications and your GMAT things. So first, I'll talk about MBA application intakes and timeline. I'll also talk about ideal time to write the GMAT, in case many of you have this question when I talk to them, that when should I write the GMAT? Then I'll talk about what GMAT score is good enough for you, like how much GMAT score should you target. And then I'll talk about the time required to prepare for GMAT. And I will also talk about how GMAT scoring works. Okay, so this is something which I'll talk about as an overview, and then we'll go from there to the study planning part. All right, guys. So I hope this is clear to all of you. So let's get going with the first portion. Okay. So let's quickly understand the MBA application timeline. So all these things that you see over here are for the fall intake. So most of the B schools basically have a fall intake, like top B schools. Fall intake is the one which generally starts around fall, which is anywhere around July to September is when the colleges start. So if you're looking at fall intake of 2023, then for the US and Canadian schools, the first deadline, round 1 deadline, is somewhere between September mid to October mid. So that's when the deadlines will be for the fall intake of next year. The round 2 deadlines generally would be between January mid to end. So basically, once Christmas holidays are over, they start processing the second round of deadlines. In the second round, applications in the second round. For European schools, on the other hand, the first round is almost similar, September mid to end. Again, a few exceptions are always there. There are a few colleges might have it earlier or later. So I'm talking about the majority of the chunk. And round 2 is around October end to November. Again, traditionally, European schools have kind of broken down the deadlines of, let's say, round 2 into like 2 parts. So they have, let's say, a traditional US round 2 is January mid. So they have a deadline around that timeline, and they have one more deadline before it, which is in October end. So they kind of distribute their workload. But technically, if you are looking at foreign B schools, as in schools outside India, and you're looking at any geography, if you apply till January end, you are fine. Like your chances of getting in does not change significantly. There is a benefit of applying in round 1, which is basically if you apply in round 1, your chances of landing a scholarship is slightly higher. Okay, so obviously that basically makes round 1 a little more important. So I'll talk about the time to take the GMAT as well, but this is basically a rough understanding of it. Those of you who are interested in IIM or ISB programs, they generally start in April or May, basically, in India. So their deadline of IIM is generally August mid to August end for round 1 and October mid for round 2, and round 3 is basically in December as well. ISB, on the other hand, is September mid as round 1, but yeah, sometimes they can shift it to August end as well. Last year they had it in August end. Round 2 is January mid generally, but they could have it in December end as well. And round 3 may or may not happen, and if it happens sometime around Feb. Okay, so round 3 is something which I generally don't recommend to apply in, like unless it is like the last option that you have. For AMS it is still okay, but not for ISB at least. Okay, I hope this part is clear to all of you. As I said, I'm not going to entertain a lot of questions on this, basically because this is not our objective here, basically. But with this, let us understand what should be the exact ideal time to kind of take the GMAT, guys. Okay, so let's understand that now. So what is the ideal time to take the GMAT? So as I said earlier as well, that basically when you kind of, let's say, apply in round 1, your chances of getting a scholarship increases a little. As in your chance of getting a scholarship is higher because the entire kitty or the entire fund is available with the school, and they know that if they have a good candidate, they might apply in round 2 to another school. So they kind of try to retain that candidate by offering a certain scholarship to them. So if you're looking at round 2 deadline, which is let's say in September or August mid, somewhere around that timeline, basically. So let's work backwards. So the ideal thing is that you should plan about 1.5 months to 2 months for your, let's say, application process. What that means is that you should write the GMAT by July in the worst case. And I always recommend that this is basically for the application process that you're keeping with yourself. Okay. And if you add 1 month buffer, let's say for any reason your GMAT does not go well, if you want to add just a 1 month buffer for that, then you should be taking the GMAT by June. June is the ideal time to take the GMAT. If you can do it in the first attempt, nothing is better than that, because then you will have 2.5 to 3 months focus for the application process, and you can actually do really, really well in this timeline if you actually plan it right. So ideally, if you look at from now, Feb is what we are standing in right now. So March, April, May, June. So you have good 4 months now for your studies. Again, people do take a GMAT in July as well. People do take it in August and still apply in round 1. But then it becomes a little hectic, or you have to work on both applications as well as your GMAT in parallel. So that is something which you can always manage. But it is better that if you kind of plan your studies from now onwards, start it seriously and get done with it in 4 months. Now, I'm going to definitely help you understand the strategy, the study plan, how to create it through this session. But make sure that you take the GMAT preparation seriously now, because it is the right time to start your prep. Now, what should be your target GMAT score? Now, if you're looking at, let's say, tier 1 B schools in US, or let's call it top 10 B schools in US, basically, generally a 750 is the minimum that you require. And for top 10 B schools, again, just the GMAT score is not sufficient. You need to have an excellent profile as well, because they're very, very competitive. So you have to have a good profile, and along with that, you have to get a 750 or more. Many people come and ask me that, okay, is 750 still required if you have a great profile? My answer is yes, because the competition is so high that all top quality students apply to these schools. So they end up also doing well on GMAT. Now, this is what I'm telling you from the perspective of an Indian demographic, let's say, or if you're from Southeast Asia or India, where the average GMAT score tends to be really high. But if you are from other nationalities, basically, like let's say other than Chinese and Indian students, if you're other nationality student, then a 730 is basically the average. So you require a 730 or more. Like even in some cases, 710, 700 is also sufficient if you have an exceptional profile. We had one candidate who even received a conditional offer from Wharton that if he scores a 600 on GMAT, they will take him in. His profile was so good. Like Wharton was so impressed with them. So obviously there are people who have those cases, but they are always exceptional cases. I'm talking about the majority of the masses over here. If you're interested in 11 to 20 US schools, 11 to 20 ranked US schools, still look at 730 or more. The general average, it tends to be around 710 or more. So generally 730 or more is required for Indian students. Anything between 21 to 30 in US, generally 700 or more tends to be sufficient. Again, there will be some schools ranking wise, they don't come in like 21 to 30, but might be still requiring higher scores. So I'm just giving you an approximate idea. Okay. So A says, is this from being from India to top 10 US, or this from any person of origin? How can we start building a great profile? So Vanshika, all these questions are not part of the session A. All these questions are not part of the session. We are focusing on the study plan. This is just to give you an overview, guys. So I'm not going to answer these questions right now, but if you like towards the end, I'll have 5-10 minutes for the Q&A part. There you can ask these questions. I'll definitely take them up over there as well. So this is for US. If you're looking at European schools, generally they're not super crazy for GMAT scores. They will focus a lot more on a profile. So rule of thumb, top 10 European schools, top 5 European schools, I would say 720 or more is sufficient. Between 6 to 10, even 700 or more is sufficient for European schools. Generally, like I'm talking about general use case. For ISB, again, you require a 720 or more if your profile is average. If your profile is great, we have a student who is having an interview with ISB tomorrow. He has a 650 on GMAT. Because of his profile, he's still got a call from ISB, and he's most likely going to convert it as well if it does well on the interview. So profile also matters a lot, but this is just an approximate idea which I'm trying to give you over here. Now, what is the prep time required for GMAT? So generally what I say is that if you are, let's say, an average student, okay, like average as in average definition is subjective at the end of the day, but if you're not an exceptional student or something, what I recommend is about 250 to 300 hours of prep time is what you plan for if you're targeting something up to a 720 on the test. If you're targeting, let's say, 750 plus, you need to add about, I would say 50 to 75 hours extra on top of this. So this is basically the time commitment, approximately, assuming that you are doing the right things on day one. If you're not doing the right things on day one, obviously this timeline can get stressed a little more. So if you do the right things on day one, do things properly, then you can actually look at this kind of a timeline for GMAT. Now, if you are an exceptional student, let's say you have been doing exceptionally well in your academics, right? Then this timeline can be as less as 100 to like 150 hours for you. We have had students in the past. I'll give you an example as well. We have had students in the past who have done very less prep, like approximately 1.5 months of prep, and were able to still get 760 on GMAT in the very first attempt. So you can check out Shayash's story. I've just shared that link in the chat with you, and you will understand like how much time generally it takes basically. For this, I would still say about 200 hours might be required basically if you're an exceptional student. Now, if you're below average or generally weak, basically, this timeline could be looking something like 300 to 400 hours. This timeline could be looking like 400 to 500 hours for you. So the effort will definitely depend on how quickly you learn things. Again, when I say weak, exceptional, average, all these are like subjective things. Like it's not easy to say. Like for example, I never scored a 95 plus in quant ever in my life in 10th or 12th, or I never scored a 80 plus, in fact, in English language. So I was an average student in that regard, but I was an exceptional student when it comes to logical understanding. So it is very important for you to understand basically what is like what kind of student you are basically, and that then you can actually work backwards from there. So I'll just share another story with you of one of our students who was able to complete their entire preparation in just 2 months with a full-time job, and he was among the average students only. In the first attempt, he was able to get a 740 on GMAT. This is Hardik. You can check out his interview later on to understand and learn from how he went about doing things. Okay, so I have a few questions from other people. Akhilesh says, what is the average score for Canadian schools? Again, for Rotman, for Indian background, 740 or more. For other schools, 710 or more is good enough. How do we know if you're studying in the right ways? It's a big problem if I had when I first took the test. So Emily, generally, there are a few things that you can do to understand whether you're studying in the right way. Number one, you need to have a proper structured study plan. Like proper study plan should be there, which tells you exactly what needs to be done on every single day. And it should be a personalized plan of action. It should not be something which is the same for every student. It should be personalized to your strengths and weaknesses. You should have metrics to measure your strength and weak areas as well, so that you can focus on them. And if you have access to a mentor who can look at the data and help you understand whether you're headed in the right direction or not, that makes your life a little easier. So these are a few things that you need to have, but stay with me. I'll help you understand how to do all this. Is mock test a good source for studying? Jason, is mock test a good source for studying? Is like saying that you directly jump on the field, you directly start playing on the field for a tournament, right? So it's not the right thing to do. First thing you need to do is learn the basics of the game, understand it, practice it in general nets, or like it's one skill level, then second skill level, and then third skill level. Mock test is the last phase of your prep, and I'm going to talk about that, Jason. So don't worry, let's not move ahead of ourselves. So I'll definitely talk about that, Jason, in depth. Okay. So let's now understand how GMAT scoring works. Now, a lot of you are new to the test. So one thing which a lot of people find it troubling is to understand how the GMAT really functions. Because when we do a general test, like if you look at a general test, let's say the test is of 30 questions, okay? You get 20 questions right? You get 20 questions right, and let's say each question carries 3 marks. Then you know your score is basically 60 points. Okay, that's how normal tests works. Almost every test works in the similar fashion, that you have a certain weightage assigned to each question, and you get the questions right and you get a good score. But GMAT is an adaptive test. GMAT is a different test. Now, it is not as simple as other tests where you kind of compare accuracy with high score. That is something you cannot do on GMAT. Let's take an example to understand this point. Okay, so this is an enhanced score report which I'm showing you, where a student has, this is actually my score report for verbal section. So I scored a verbal 41, which is like 93 or 94 percentile on GMAT, basically. And verbal 41 I achieved, and this chart shows us how many mistakes I made. So I made a total of 2 mistakes in the first quarter of the test in verbal, 2 mistakes in the second quarter, now no mistakes in the third quarter, and 3 mistakes in the last quarter. So my number of mistakes in the entire verbal section was 7. All right, guys. So you can see that the total number of mistakes made by me was 7, and my verbal score was 41. Okay, register this data point in your mind. Now I'm going to show you another enhanced score report on your screen. Okay, so on the right side, you see another enhanced score report. In this one, the student has made 5 mistakes all in all. I made 7 mistakes. This student has made 5 mistakes. My score was a verbal 41 on a scale of 51. 51 is the highest that they give you. The scale is actually to 60. They have kept 9 points as reserve. But let's ignore that. You know that my score was a verbal 41 on 7 mistakes. I wanted to guess what would be the verbal score of this student who has made 5 mistakes. Take a moment to guess it. I'm giving you 1 minute to make a guess and type your answers in the poll. What do you think will be the verbal score of this particular student that you see on the right side, who has made 5 mistakes? What do you think will be the verbal score of this particular student? Do let me know what you think about this. Let's see some responses from you. Okay, I do see a good number of responses. Fazila says 36, Akhilesh says 37, Naman says 38. Why you guys are saying it should be less than 41? Many of you are saying less than 41. Why do you think so, guys? Parth, Naman, Akhilesh, Fahiza. Why do you think it should be less than 41? Sushant says 44, Jason says 45, Abbas says 51. Okay, Abbas says should be perfect score. Okay, good. Cheetung says 45, Supreet says 52, Damini says 45. So many of you are going for more than 41, which seems logical, right? Less mistakes, score should be higher. Many of you are saying less than 41. And I asked for explanation. Fahiza has it. Fahiza says 62% in first questions can affect the score badly. 3 wrong in the initial quarter. So Parth, Fahiza, probably you guys understand the GMAT algorithm a little better. That's good to know. Salma says 44. Let me reveal the score, guys. Let me reveal the score of this particular student. This student scored a mere 34 on Wobble. Now, this is this 7 points could be seeming like a lot less to you guys. Okay, it might be seeming like, okay, I'm talking about 41, 34. How different is it? Let's compare the percentile, guys. Let's compare the percentile and you will understand the difference. This guy who got 5 mistakes, made 5 mistakes, got a percentile of 71, and I got a percentile of 93. Okay, this is how GMAT algorithm works. How many of you are thinking that GMAT algorithm is crazy or it is unfair? Let's keep it that way. So select a yes if you think the GMAT algorithm is unfair. Parth says I did not expect that low. Okay, got wrong questions earlier in the test. Yes, it's adaptive when the person got the few questions wrong, so the level of questions reduced. Exactly, Emily. So it's a complex test. It's not a very simple test like other tests where accuracy is the king. Accuracy is not what matters on the test. It does matter, but it's not the only thing. What matters more is skill, basically, on GMAT. And what is skill? Skill is basically the ability to get a question of any difficulty level correct with consistency. So it is very important that you are able to get questions correct on a consistent basis of any difficulty level. It's not just about high accuracy. So I see about 61% of you are saying that GMAT is an unfair test or it's very harsh to students. But trust me, guys, it is one of the most standardized tests. What basically happened that you see with this particular student was that in the beginning itself, she made a lot of mistakes. Again, I generally in my other webinar, I'll just give you a link of one of my other webinars. Again, this is something which will happen as a part of this webinar series also. So later on, if you want to attend it live, you can always do that. And in the meantime, if you want to go through this particular webinar, you can check this out. I have covered this in depth, why this happened, by showing the detailed ESR completely over here. So that is something which I have covered in this session. You can check this out. But right now, I'm just going to quickly cover this part. So basically, this student in the very first 3 questions, she made a lot of mistakes in the very beginning itself. And because she made a lot of mistakes in the very beginning, the algorithm started giving her only easier questions, so simpler questions. And she was only able to get those easier questions right. Now, GMAT obviously is designed by very smart people. So what they also take into account is that when you have gone down to a level of easy questions, then your chances of getting them right is very high. So it is very difficult for you to come back if you go down to the level of easy questions. So what this student has really done is that she went down to the easy level because of the mistakes that he committed initially. On the other hand, I got my initial questions right. In fact, the 2 mistakes that I made were not even in the beginning of the test. It was towards the end of the first quarter, because of which my difficulty level rose significantly and it kept at a high level. Okay, now I'll give you data points also. Don't worry about it. Right now, I'm just explaining you in an abstract fashion, but let me show you some data points also. So in simple terms, if I have to actually simplify things, let me simplify it and then I'll give you more data points. So if you want to get a 700 plus on GMAT, okay, you don't have any scope for errors in like easy and medium questions. And let me make this, let's say, 720 plus. Let's call it 720 plus. So you don't have any scope for error in easy and medium questions. You need to get almost all of them correct. Like in medium questions, 90% accuracy is the minimum that you require if you want to get that level. Now, what about hard questions? Now, the hard questions, the higher your accuracy, the better your score is. So if you want to touch the 720 kind of a mark, even a 60% accuracy will do. But if you want to get to a 750 kind of a number, your accuracy should be about 80% or so. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that accuracy is not the only thing you should be looking at. You should be basically looking at the entire accuracy across the spectrum of easy, medium, and hard questions. So let's take some simple data points. So what I did was I sat with a lot of ESRs, basically about 100 plus ESRs I looked at, and I kind of tried to figure out students who scored verbal 40 or more. And when I say verbal 40 or more, try to understand this is a skill level which is comparable to someone who is scoring 740 plus on GMAT. So people who score 740 plus generally have verbal 40 or more. This is a skill level which is for people in the range of 700 to 740. You can compare it that way, okay? This is a skill level which is for people who are in the 650 to 700 range, basically. And this is the skill level of people who are in the 600 to 650 range. So I've just given you different skill levels so that you can actually match the line of reasoning which I'm trying to bring over here. So what I did was I looked at all these people. I took multiple data points, and I'm just showing you one data point from each category. And I looked at the number of medium questions that they got correct and the number of medium hard questions that these people got correct. Now, medium hard, in another lingo, you can call it 700 level question. Okay, medium hard is 700 level question. Okay, so basically think of it this way, that the test starts with a medium difficulty. If you get those questions right, then it increases your difficulty to medium hard. If you continue getting the medium hard questions right, you stay at that difficulty only, you get more and more medium hard questions, you get more and more chances of getting them right. Simple, okay? If you get those medium hard questions wrong, now depends on where do you get them wrong, how many you get them wrong, you can be brought down to the medium level again. So it's possible that if you don't do well on the medium hard questions, you will be brought down to the medium level. If you do decently well, you can stay on the medium hard level. If you do very well, you don't even stay at the medium hard level, you even get a lot of scores from it. So what you see right now on the screen is basically the number of questions that a student has got at a medium difficulty correct and a medium hard difficulty correct. So what you can see is all these people got at least 14 to 15 questions correct. In fact, the higher you go, the number of medium hard questions you get correct increases significantly, right? Now, if you look at the other category, people in the score range of 36 to 39, these people get slightly more medium questions correct than the medium hard. The medium hard question correct number is around 10, 12 in that range, basically. So what happens is that they zigzag. These people get medium questions right, go to the medium hard level, but then they sometimes come back to the medium level again. Then they do them right, get back to the medium hard level. So there is a zigzag pattern which happens. Again, they get some medium hard questions wrong. They are not consistent with medium hard questions. Okay. If you look at mid-30s, like people in the bracket of 650 and 700, this is where most people see a plateau. Most people get stuck in this particular range. So those who get stuck in this particular range, what happens with them is they're not able to get the medium hard questions correct consistently. In fact, they're getting them wrong in most cases. So the algorithm brings them back to medium again and again, and that's where they stand. Okay. And people who are in the 600 to 650 range, they generally don't get any medium hard question right. It is more like they stay throughout in the medium range itself because they zigzag in the medium range itself. They are not having even a consistent accuracy in the medium range, basically. So that's what you can understand from the GMAT algorithm. So is this part clear to all of you guys? I'm going to just give you a poll. Are these four charts clear to all of you? Any questions on this? And what is the inference do you guys draw? Those who are clear with this, let me know what is the inference that you have drawn from this data point that I've shared. And this is a data point which took me a lot of time to get to, because you can understand the, and again, I've tried to simplify it as much as possible. Reading the ESR is not a very easy task. It is a very complex thing, but I've tried to read hundreds of them for just giving you this data point. I hope this is clear to all of you. And what is that you understand from this? Akhilesh says consistency. Okay. What else, guys? Fair point, Akhilesh. Consistency is the key. Diksha says good. Okay, so I see the poll. A lot of you have already polled in this one. I will still wait for a few more responses. Accuracy and consistency. Okay, Naman has brought another aspect. He says accuracy and consistency. A says, can you get more medium hard questions only if you get the early medium questions correct? Yes, A. So if you get the early medium questions, then only you get to the medium hard level. The sooner you get to the medium hard level, the more medium hard questions you will get in the test. Okay, but you have to get those right. If you don't get those right, then you are brought back to the medium level. So basically, you have to get to the medium hard early and then stay at that level. Skill and clarity is more important. Very valid point, Karina. Higher the difficulty, more marks allotted. Yes, Vanshika, very valid point, very, very true point. So I see 90%, 91% of you are clear. I'm very happy that you were able to understand this. It's better to be consistent, but left some questions unanswered. So again, Jason, that is a part of the other webinar, which I will be taking as a part of this webinar series. So be there for sure in the timing strategy webinar. I decode the GMAT algorithm in depth in that one, so you'll get to know a lot more about it. But yeah, leaving a question unanswered is never the right thing to do on GMAT. You should guess the questions at least, because GMAT penalizes you more heavily for leaving questions than getting them wrong. Okay, so I'll talk about all this in depth. How can you tell if you are doing medium hard ones during the test? So again, that is not an easy job to do, but if you're an expert, you have done a lot of practice, you kind of get to know that. Otherwise the result will tell you anyway, because this is something which ESR is an enhanced score report which you can get from GMAT. So in that they give you the difficulty level breakdown. Okay, so now why did I talk about all this? So one aspect was to kind of help you understand the scoring of GMAT. Okay, how does GMAT scoring works? But another reason why I talked about this was to help you understand the impact of GMAT scoring on GMAT prep. Because see, many people, when they start their prep, they do not understand how GMAT scoring works. When they don't understand how GMAT scoring works, they treat it like just another test. So when they are preparing for the GMAT, they don't take into account one very important factor. And when they don't take into account that factor, their entire prep falls flat on their face. Basically, they are not able to do well on the test just because they were not aware of how the GMAT scoring really works, or they did not take that into account. So what is the one learning that we understood from this particular discussion that we had? The learning that we understood was we need to get more and more medium hard questions correct consistently, as most of you were saying, right? High accuracy with consistency. Now, what that means is that I cannot just aim for getting questions right. I should not focus on accuracy alone. Many people focus on accuracy alone or timing. In fact, they focus on timing so much so that they start learning shortcuts. They think that if only I had more time to take the test, I could really do well. I could get the questions right. What they don't realize is when they start looking at shortcuts only work on easy and medium questions. Shortcuts don't work on GMAT. Simple reason, because they only work on easy and medium questions. They will never ever work on hard questions. You cannot get a hard question right. You will find, in fact, when I was a student, I remember when I was preparing, I used to go to coaching classes. There were a lot of teachers who used to show me amazing shortcuts. I used to love those shortcuts because again, they used to open my eyes that, okay, voila, I could have solved this question in 30 seconds. But in many cases, applying that shortcut on a hard question consistently is not easy. For hard questions, you need to learn the right method from the get-go. So please make sure that when you're preparing, you're not preparing using shortcuts. You are preparing using logical methods. And let me tell you some common shortcuts which people learn. And I also fell into this trap. I made this mistake of learning these shortcuts. So for those who have been preparing for quite some time now, if you're still using any of these shortcuts, stop it today itself. If you don't stop it, there is a very high chance that you will actually get stuck at a low or medium score in GMAT, and then you will have to again learn the logical method anyway. So you'll take up more time to study. So for example, in verbal, a lot of people use splits approach for sentence correction. They will just look at the option choices, the differences in the option choices, and try to use grammar to solve questions. Similarly, in reading comprehension, a lot of people use skimming. They will skim through the information very quickly, read the passage in 2.5 minutes, then for every question, they'll come back to the passage. Completely wrong approach, does not work on hard questions on GMAT. If your target is 600 to 650, feel free to use these shortcuts. But if your target is 700, 750, you cannot get there with these shortcuts. Please understand that. I have a question. A says, what is an easy and medium level shortcut? What is it? What is an example? So I'll see if I have an example today, A, on this session. But as I said, this is more of a strategy session. You have a lot of sessions planned in this webinar series. Be there with us. You will see a lot of examples of what a logical method means and what is a shortcut mean. Okay, so that is what we will talk about in depth, basically. Okay, so let's now move to the action plan part. That how do we create an action plan to get a GMAT high score. Again, this all I talked about was to give you a perspective and understanding that, okay, what all should you keep in mind when you are using the approach. Priyanka says, why not splits? So Priyanka, why not splits? Simple reason, it won't work on hard questions. You'll not be able to identify the splits in hard questions. Even if you do, you'll not be able to get them right, because hard questions in GMAT SC focus on the meaning-based approach, basically. And if you don't use the meaning-based approach, you'll actually struggle. So do attend the webinar which is there tomorrow on sentence correction. You'll understand why splits do not work on hard questions. They will work very well on easy questions or medium questions. You might be able to identify the split and solve the question quickly. But the problem is not with the splits approach. The problem is that you get so used to it that you don't use any other method to solve questions. So in the hard questions, you will get stuck and you'll not be able to get a good score. You're welcome, Priyanka. I'm happy that I was able to answer your question. So let's create a plan now to understand how to go about the prep. So generally, there are 3 stages of prep that we should focus on. So I remember, I think Jason, you were asking about the mocks and all, or someone else. So now I'm going to talk about this thing. So 3 phases of learning are there. First phase of your learning is learning phase, where you kind of focus on learning everything properly. And when I say learning phase, many people think, okay, this is just basic learning. You just have to learn concepts. No, this is where you spend about 70 to 80% of your energy, guys. This is the most important phase, where you don't just learn the concepts, you also learn the right method or the right process, the most logical method of solving questions. If you don't do this learning phase properly, basically, you will end up spending a lot more time in the second phase, which is your fine-tuning phase, basically. So fine-tuning phase is where you work on the weak areas, and mock phase is where you take up mock tests. So this is the last stage. Mock test is the last stage. So if you do your prep right, your fine-tuning learning phase will be about 70%, as I said, 7 is to 1.5 is to 1.5 or 7 is to 2 is to 1. Like this ratio will be something like this. Okay, if you try to cut corners on the learning phase, many people do let's say just do this in for they end up spending a lot of time in this phase, basically, or they do it in this ratio 4 is to 5 is to 1. Some people do it in this ratio 2 is to 7 is to 1 also, or 2, whatever. So something like this, they end up spending a lot more time on the fine-tuning phase, which is not right, because you will not end up achieving your target score if you don't do the first part properly. Okay, Shravan says, will this webinars be able to watch later in case people have joined it? So Shravan, yes, you will get the recording. If you have registered for the webinar series, you will get the recording of this session. So what should be a sequence of study? Let's understand that. So I'm going to focus now on the learning stage, guys, the first stage of your prep. So let's understand the sequence of studying for verbal first. And this is going to be very important. I'm going to share a thought process with you. Now, when I speak to students, a lot of people tell me that, okay, I've started with my verbal prep and I've started with all 3 areas at once. Like I do SC on Mondays, I do CR on Tuesdays, and I do RC on Wednesdays. And then I repeat this basically throughout the week. So that's what many people do. Some people start with RC, some people start with CR. Some people start reading novels or reading newspapers from day one because they think their reading speed is slow. Let me help you understand what is the right learning sequence first. And I will not just ask you to do something randomly. I'll explain you a logic. If you buy that logic, then only do that. So let's first understand what is really tested on GMAT verbal. I know SCCR and RC is tested, but what are the skills that are tested? Why does it matter for GMAT? Why does it matter for a future MBA aspirant to be tested on those skills? Let's see. First skill which is tested is comprehension. Can you comprehend a piece of information written to you in an unambiguous manner, in a clear fashion? Can you write something in a clear fashion also? So they are trying to see, as a manager, future manager, when you read something, can you understand things clearly? Can you represent the information in an unambiguous manner to the community at large as well? So that's the comprehension skill that they are testing you on. Second skill that they are testing you on is analytical reasoning, because as a business manager, you're going to take a lot of decisions in real time, in real life, after your MBA, even during your MBA. So you need to be aware of the understanding of analytical reasoning. If there is a information which is provided to you and some conclusion is drawn or some inference is drawn, is that inference correct or not? Is there a logical flow in the information or the thought flow which is provided? You need to be able to reason logically with that. The third skill which is tested on GMAT is focus on main point. If there is a long text which is provided, because you will be going through a lot of case studies in your MBA curriculum, So if there's a long text which is provided, can you focus on the main point properly in that long text? That is another thing which is tested. Now let us map all these three to the individual sections in verbal. So if you look at sentence correction, there is just one sentence that you have to analyze. So obviously there are not multiple pieces of information. There is no inference that is being derived. So you don't have to focus on analytical reasoning. You don't have to focus on main point. You just have to focus on comprehension skill. Now, if you look at CR, in CR there would be 4 to 5 sentences. So you have to understand individual sentences, and then you have to also connect those sentences to see whether there is a logical flaw between the information that is provided. So CR actually tests you on both comprehension as well as analytical reasoning. Now, what about RC? RC tests you on all three things. You have to also focus on the main point. Now, with this information in front of you, now can you guys tell me what is the most logical sequence of studying verbal section? What do you think is the most logical sequence for studying verbal? Can you guys tell me in the chat here? Let me see some thoughts from you before I tell you what is the right thing to do. Let me see some thoughts from you guys. Let's see some thoughts from you. Okay, Shravan says IC, then CR, then RC. Diksha says the same. Faiza says the reverse. She says RC, then CR, then SC. Zulia says SC, CR, RC. Naman says SC, CR, RC. What about others? SC first is what Pratik says. RC first is what A says. Kiran and Emily also go with SC, CR, and RC. Amit, Wasim. I see a lot of people coming up with SC, CR, and RC. See, that's the beauty of explaining a logic to you. You don't need to memorize stuff, right? You don't need to just buy my words. You have to understand the logic behind it. And when you understand the logic behind it, all of you, most of you are at least agreeing on this, that doing SC first makes the most sense. Why does it make the most sense? Because then you're focusing on only one skill. You're focusing on the skill of comprehension. You build that skill. Once you're confident with that skill, then you move to CR. So if you don't do well on CR, you know that the culprit is analytical reasoning. You don't have to look back on comprehension, right? You have to just focus on one skill at a time if you follow this particular sequence. Now, there are a few people who are saying RC is what we start with. Let's understand the problem with that. If you start with RC, then you have to work on all three skills at the same time. You have to work on all three at the same time. It's not easy, guys. If you falter, you will have a tough time in understanding where are you faltering. Is it main point? Is it analytical reasoning? Is it comprehension? And this is a proven formula, guys. We have worked with so many students. We have delivered an average score improvement of 100+ points, and we have been delivering that for last 3 years consistently. We are the highest rated course on GMAT Club because of that. And this approach works wonders for students. Trust me, guys, it works wonders for students. Okay, so follow this sequence. Now, what about verbal, quant, sorry. Then quant, generally what many people do is they will do number properties, then algebra, and so on. What I recommend is that you should do the basic topics in quant first, because in quant, everything is interrelated. You might have one topic relying on another one. So basic topics you do first, which will help you in all intermediate topics, which will help you eventually in the advanced topics. Now, I have just given some names over here. The entire list is basically over here. And I've color-coded the areas from number properties in green, the algebra in blue, word problems in red, and so on. So you can see how interlinked they are. And this list is created after a lot of hard work and research. We have sat and identified the interlinkages between things. For example, when you're working on units digit, you have to know the concept of divisibility and remainders. For divisibility and remainders, you should know the concept of LCM GCD. For this, you should know the concept of prime numbers. And for prime numbers, you should know even odd numbers. In prime factorization, you will be working with exponents also, because there will be exponents. In prime factorization, you might have equations to solve. And for prime factorization, you might need to know about the number basics also. So what we have done over here is we have worked backwards. We have tried to understand exactly what should be the sequence for each and every topic that you should go through in quant. So if you want, you can take a screenshot of this, or I'm going to give you an option and I'm going to show you an option through which you can even refer to this list later on as well. Anshu says, can someone put the order of VA prep in the chat box? I lost the connection in the last 2 minutes. So Anshu, it is SC, then CR, then RC. That is what I was recommending for beginners. Okay. Now, with the sequence clear in your mind, it is very important that you now have proper timeline in place, because if you don't have a proper action plan with you, which tells you exactly what to do on each day or each week, you will not be able to stick to the schedule and not be able to take the GMAT by June when I was asking you to. So basically, if you want to get done for the test, please make sure that you create a proper plan of action. And the things you should take into account is your strengths and weaknesses. If you're more stronger in one area than the other, then obviously you should spend more time on that. You should also take into account the time available with you in a current week. You should not just take a study plan from the internet, which is for someone who can give 30 hours a week or 25 hours a week, and you only have 10 hours a week or 15 hours a week. So take into account how much time is available with you. Take also into account the sequence of learning for you. What is the best sequence for learning for you? It's possible that in some areas you're strong, you might have to learn less in that. So the next thing which comes into picture is how much content should you study in each area? Which questions do you solve? How many questions do you solve? What do you do after solving questions? So when it comes to creating an action plan, since all these has to be devised by a student by himself, it becomes a tremendous and a tedious task. Many people plan this right, spend a month, spend 15-20 days on researching on the internet. Either they come up with a good plan or they come up with an average plan. So, and in many cases don't even have a study plan. They just give up and they just start studying randomly. Every day when I speak to 7 to 8 students, out of those at least 3 or 4 students come to me who say, I've wasted my last 3-4 months studying randomly using the official guide and the Manhattan books. I'm not seeing any improvement in your score. What do I do? So many people do not know exactly how to start just because they don't have a proper study plan. So what I'm going to show you next is how to create a free study plan for yourself, where you don't have to worry about any of these factors. At GMAT Wiz, we sat for an entire year, used our experience of decades, created a technology platform which uses all the data points that a human being will use to create a study plan for you, and something which is a very adaptive option. So what you can do is you can today go to GMAT Wiz, just create a free trial account, and I'm just going to show you a short video on this, how it basically works. So basically when you create a free trial account, just give me 1 second guys, I'm not sure what is wrong with this, just give me 1 second. Okay, I'm gonna just stop sharing my screen once. All right, there was a small issue with the video, so I'm gonna share it now. I guess you guys should be able to see it now. All right, so basically when you come on our website and you create a free trial account, in the very beginning it will help you create a personalized study plan in less than a minute by asking you some simple questions basically. So in the initial time it will ask you some basic information, like for example, what is your target GMAT score? So you can mention what is your target GMAT score over here. Whatever is target, just mention that. Second stage, if you know a GMAT score, you currently have a GMAT score or a mock score, you can just mention that. If you don't have it, just mention I don't have a score. If you know your content verbal scores, you can go ahead and mention that. It will take it into account to identify how much content do you need to study in each area. If you don't have a score, just select that. It can even enter your individual module-wise scores for SCCR and RC, or just select I don't have a module-wise score and enter how much time is available with you. You can select any of the options which are there. Later on, you can even personalize it to mention 15 hours, 16 hours also. Then there is a proper study plan which is created to you. You use AI to create this for you. Again, the logic is written by experts, tested on students for a long time, and we have seen it works perfectly. So it's right now identifying what is the right learning sequence for you, which is the right order based on your score. So it's possible that SCCR RC is something which we may not follow if your performance in RC is way above par compared to SC and CR, or your performance in SC is way above par. And you can see the number of days of effort planned for each activity for you based on the time that you have entered. So you can complete all this process, and at the end what it will also do is it will create a proper week-wise study plan for you. So it's just like working with a fitness expert where you are given a certain task. So for example, this week your task is to basically complete 16 hours of work, completing these many lessons, these many quizzes, and if you click on the start button, you can right away get started. So you're working on a proper action plan, and all this study plan is free of charge. In the free trial, we give you also access to some content. So all the videos you need to go through, all the quizzes you need to solve, everything will be served to you in the study plan feature itself. You can click on the start button and get access to the entire thing in this. So in the free trial, the study plan is completely free. Content is limited. We have given you access to about 10% of our course content. If you want to access entire content, you can always upgrade your account. So you can see the entire curriculum for this week with you. And all this is adaptive. This changes in real time based on how you score in different areas. So what you see right now will always change based on how you perform. And you can go to the calendar view and even see the entire journey plan. You can click on any of these buttons also to kind of go to that particular week or month, and you can access the coursework from there. Okay, so in case you're interested in this, we will actually share, I'm going to share the link to, and just check out the free trial as well to kind of get an idea about like how the platform works, and you can also get anyway the free study plan from the calendar view as well. Okay, so let's now get going to the second part. Now we understand what is the right sequence. We should do SC, then CR, then RC. But how do we learn something? What is the basically overall structure that you should follow when you are actually learning a topic? And what I mean by a topic, let me define that for you. So by a topic, I mean the last level entity that is there. For example, topic is basically, let's say, just let me go over here. Prime numbers is a topic in quant. Okay. Verb tenses is a topic in verbal. Okay. You have assumptions as a topic basically, or strengthen, weaken as a topic, or main point as a topic in verbal. So that's what I mean by a topic. So whenever you're learning a particular topic, there are 3 steps of learning that you should follow. Step 1 is you should always start by learning concepts. So first step, and this is something which is a lot of people definitely do, you need to go through every concept which is actually tested on GMAT for that particular topic. So what I'm showing you is an example of all the concepts which are related to prime numbers on your screen. Similarly, some concepts are related to divisibility. You can see them on your screen. These are obviously screenshots from our videos. So in our GMAT list course, if you take it up or you're a GMAT list student, you'll have videos for learning concepts where we'll teach you the concepts, but you should also learn the concept from a logical perspective. So that is what we try to do through our coursework. So please make sure that you learn concepts first. So this is something which most people end up doing anyway. The second thing which is very important, and many people don't do this, the second step after learning concept, many people directly jump to practicing questions. They will just jump to solving questions. Okay, I've learned concepts, let me directly solve questions now. But the step 2 is actually very, very critical. This is the most important step, guys, in case you want to ace the GMAT. Remember, this is the most important part. Basically, if you don't do this right, you will end up taking 2 to 3 times the time that is required to get a good score on GMAT. Okay, so please make sure that this step is done very properly. Now, what is this step? I've created a lot of gravity around it. But what is this step? 2 things basically you have to do in this step. Number 1, you have to learn the right method before jumping to solving questions. Understand and learn the right method of solving questions, because guys, understand it this way. If you don't know the right method of solving questions and you have just learned concepts and you just jump into solving questions, you will never be able to do justice to those, because you might be applying a wrong method. You might be taking a lot more time to get to a certain efficiency, or you might even not realize that you are actually not getting to the efficiency. So please make sure that you learn a method, and you also should expose yourself to all different ways in which GMAT can test you. See, there is one very good thing about GMAT. GMAT happens around the year. Okay, you can take the GMAT any day. So what that means is they have to create thousands of questions, thousands of fresh questions every single year. Okay, so if you are a test, like as a test, if you have to create thousands of questions every single year, you cannot innovate a lot. So what GMAT has done is they have standardized the number of ways in which they are going to test you. Right? That's one very good thing with GMAT. So if there is a topic like prime numbers in GMAT, they will only test you on prime numbers in specific ways. Those could be 7, 8 different variations, but they're always limited variations. What many people do is they don't expose themselves to all the different varieties. So on the day of the test, they see a new variety, they get like set back. Like, I have not seen this kind of question ever. So obviously the question data could be different, the scenario could be different, but the main area in which they're testing you is always standardized. So if you expose yourself to all variations, then you will actually get to like move to the third stage and do it properly. So learn all the variations as well as the method. Now let me give you an example, guys, to understand this. So I was talking about divisibility. So you know the divisibility rule. You also learned the concept of a number is basically quotient into divisor plus remainder. Let's say you learn this concept in the divisibility topic. Okay. Now there are multiple ways in which it is tested. For example, instead of focusing on this as a rule, try to focus on this as a rule, that n is equal to q into d1 plus r is divided by d2. This is a question type on GMAT. They say a number is divided by a certain divisor. It leaves the remainder r. They will give you these values basically, okay? And they will ask you, what if it is divided by d2 instead of d1? What is the remainder? So that's a variation. That's a type. In this variation, there are multiple ways in which they can test you. One variation of this is when d2, that second divisor, is the factor of d1. For example, 12 q plus 5, as in if a number is divided by 12, it leaves a remainder of 5. They ask you what is the remainder when it is divided by 6. So this is one variation. Second variation is another variety of d2 is a factor of d1, but in this case the remainder is bigger than d2 basically. In this case the remainder is smaller than d2. Okay. Variation 3, d2 is a multiple of d1. Instead of being a factor, it becomes a multiple of d1. For example, 6 and 12. 12 is a multiple of 6 instead of factor of 6, basically. Variation 4 is d2 and d1 have nothing in common, basically. So again, there are different ways in which GMAT can test you. In many cases, people prepare only for a few variations. They don't prepare how to tackle different type of variations. And when you're doing this, you don't need to memorize this question type, guys. You need to understand the logical method, a logical step-by-step method that can be applied to solve all different variations, any other variations that exist, basically. So very important, after you learn concepts, you go to the second stage, learn all variations and all the methods. Now, to help you achieve this, at GMAT Viz, we have created an idea of concept booster. So we came up with this very unique concept that let's create a file called concept booster. At the end of, like after you learn the video concepts through video lessons, we give you concept boosters where you get to solve question number one question at a time. So first question will be based on variation 1 of that particular topic. Okay, so you solve one question, and right after solving the question, you will get to see the solution of the question. So you'll have the solution of variation 1. Now, why do we show you the solution right after the question? There's also a logic behind that. What we thought was that when you do only one question, every single step that you followed while solving the question is very fresh in your mind. So right now, if you look at the solution, which explains you every step in depth, you can actually relate to it, see the difference in your approach vis-a-vis the right approach, and improve your method right away. Remember, guys, what we focused on in step 2 was to learn all variations as well as the method as well. So for the method part, this really helps, because when you see one question, solve one question and see the solution that we have in the concept booster details out the entire process. It even tells you what you should think after reading the first line, second line, every part of it. So you develop that thought by thought, step-by-step thought process of solving questions in an organized fashion. And then we take you to variation 2, second question basically. Then you see solution of variation 2 and so on to variation 3 and so on. So in this way, in the concept booster, we cover a different aspect through every question. Each question is handpicked, and we make sure that we cover all variations that are tested on GMAT from that particular area. So this way, you get a very good exposure to get an idea about all the variations, all the different varieties, and the right method as well. So this is very important, guys, for you to do. And you will see this in every topic. For example, even if you are on free trial, you will see that in the prime numbers lesson, we are first teaching you concepts, basically through videos. Okay. Second step is concept booster, where we are teaching you all the methods that you should follow, the right method. And then it is followed by a quiz, which is to practice, basically. So the third step is the quiz, but I want to come to that a little later. Now, let me help you understand how to analyze the method. Now, this is something which many people don't really understand well. When I ask people how to analyze, how do you review solutions, that's where a lot of people make a lot of mistakes. What they do is they say, okay, if I get a question wrong, I look at, only then I review the solution. If I get it right, I don't care about the solution. So that's one very big mistake. You should never ever be doing that. Even for a question that you get right, don't just assume that you have used the best method. Please check out the solution always, and remember always to check whether you got it right because of the right rationale, the right method is there. So please make sure that you check that. And in many cases, when you get the question wrong, most people, when they come to review the solution, they will just look at the option that they marked and the option which is the right option, or at best they will just look at the option analysis. What they don't understand is that the right answer does not lie in the options. It is to be picked from the options, but the answer lies in the question stem. So unless you analyze the question stem or analyze your understanding of the question stem that you generated with the right analysis, you are never doing justice to the time that you have spent on that question. You're never gonna improve your method. Okay, so this is the most important part, guys. If you have just joined the webinar, you have been here for an hour, whatever you have done, if you have to take just one learning through this entire session, this is the learning that you should take up. You need to improve your method. You need to use the right method, and that holds the key to get a 700 plus on GMAT. There's no other way. So let's learn how to validate the method. So right now you see a CR question in front of you. I'm not going to solve this question. Let me be very clear. The objective is not to solve a CR question. What I want you to do is I want you to read this prompt. Read this question prompt. Take a minute and a half, what you need. Read this question prompt, and then I'll help you understand how to utilize the solutions to learn from a question. Okay. So take a minute. I'm going to mute myself for a minute, and then we will look at how to analyze the solution of this question. Okay. So I'm muting myself. You have 1 minute of silence to just go about it. All right, guys, I hope you are reading this. In the meantime, I have a question from A. A says, what if I just can't improve? So A, as Anupam has said, unlearn what you have learned earlier and learn afresh. That could work, but more importantly, you should identify why you are not able to improve. In most cases, if you can't improve, the general reason behind that is that you are not focusing on the root cause. So you need to focus on the root cause. If you are open to feedback, you're not stubborn and you're open to feedback, you're open to learn something properly, and you are able to identify exactly the root cause why you are struggling, then you will always improve. See, whether you will get to a 750, 760 is a different question. But in my opinion, even if you're a weak student, you can still get to a 700, 710 with hard work and smart work combined, basically. So I'm just gonna give you some motivation. If you are looking at motivation, check out this interview. This is with Maria, and she's a non-native speaker, by the way. She's not from a native English background, and she was stuck at a score of 460 after studying and taking the first attempt. After studying properly, she took the first attempt, scored only a 460 on GMAT, and from there she improved to a 710. It took her a little longer, but she never gave up. She focused on the right things and she was able to get to the score. So there's no reason why you can't improve if you think and focus on the right things. Okay, so let's get started with the solution analysis that I was telling you earlier, guys. So basically, how do you review solution? So basically, when you see the solution, what we should always do is that, let's say there were these 4 sentences that you saw. So you should ask yourself, okay, when I read this first sentence, and only the first sentence, not the entire argument, when I read just the first sentence, what is that I understood from it? Did I actually think in this fashion that there exist arguments which are backed by evidence? Did I think that according to this argument, there are areas of land on that are yet unexplored? Did I think that this amount of this unexplored land is equal to the amount of land that is at present being cultivated, and did I come to this final understanding? This is how you should analyze that. Okay, when I read the first line, did I actually think in this fashion? Did I actually think in this fashion? That is something which is important. Similarly, you should ask yourself, when you read the second line, did you stop, combine this information with this information which is presented over here, and did you come up with this inference? Similarly, when you read the third line, this part basically, did you combine all these pieces of information together and did you come up with this inference? Trust me guys, the biggest reason why people make errors in verbal is because they don't understand the context. They will continue reading without doing any analysis. They will leave all the analysis till the time they go to the options. And the options confuse you. They will make you fall in a trap. So all you have to do in verbal is to contextualize things correctly. Now, you will try your best to do so, but if you're not doing it, then you should have access to solutions that help you understand each part. When I was a student, I struggled to get this level of analysis ever. All the solutions that I had access to were just explaining why one option is right and the other ones are wrong. So what I started doing was I started memorizing my errors. And trust me, guys, you cannot ever do well on the test by trying not to make an error. You cannot do well. You cannot memorize all the errors and try not to commit it on the test. The only way you can do well on the test is following the right method. So please make sure that you check your analysis of the question stem for every single sentence. If you do this right, you will get every question correct. Trust me, guys, you'll never struggle with consistency at all. Is this part clear to you? I hope this is clear to you. Is this part clear to you? Quick yes, no in the poll. Is this part clear to you guys? Quick yes, no in the poll. Is this part clear to you guys? Quick yes, no in the poll. The way you should utilize the solutions, how to review the solutions. Is this clear to you guys? Let me wait for a few more votes. All right, I do see a decent number of votes already, so I'm going to end the poll now. So I see 95% of you are clear about this, 5% if you're not. Whosoever has any doubts, please feel free to ask me in the chat. I'm more than happy to take that up for you. So once you have learned the method, the right method of solving questions, then you should go about practicing questions. Take a topic quiz. Take a quiz from that particular topic that you have learned. Find out your strengths. If you don't have a strength, if you have any weaknesses in it, then focus on your weak areas right away. Another mistake which many people do, they are not comfortable with the basic topics, they move to the advanced topics without realizing that the advanced topics will require you to be good at the basic topics first. So what we always recommend at GMAT is that you should follow a progressive learning architecture, where when you are doing topic 1, till the time you have done topic 1, you are tested on topic 1. But when you move to topic 2 and topic 3, you are tested on topic 1 also along with those topics. And when you move to topic 5, you are tested on topic 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Obviously, not in all questions, we can't test you on all topics. So it is very important that you are tested progressively on different things. So we also inculcate that progressive learning architecture in our coursework. And if you don't do a topic thoroughly and you're not comfortable with it, you should not move forward, because otherwise you will end up making mistakes in the more advanced topic. So if you're not doing well, identify your conceptual weaknesses and work on that right away. And if you are taking GMAT quiz, if you're working with GMAT quiz, you don't have to worry about any of this. Our AI will automatically identify your conceptual gaps at the end of the practice quiz. If there are concept gaps, it will add additional lessons to your course. It will even identify additional questions for you and add it to your course. So please make sure that you work on that. Okay. Now, with this understanding clear to you now, the 3 learning steps which I talked about, learning concepts, learning method, and then practicing questions. These 3 steps clear in your mind. Let's take an example on sentence correction and see how to apply this. Now, when many people learn sentence correction, and again, a lot of you had started their prep as well for 1 month or less, a lot of you have been preparing for some time. So many of you will be able to relate to this. Now, when I started my preparation for sentence correction, what I focused on was know the rules, because grammar is what is tested on SC. So I started learning rules. I learned a lot of rules of subject verb pairs, tenses, modifiers, pronouns, parallelism, and whatnot. So I learned so many different rules for each of the sections of verbal of sentence correction. And the best part was when I was doing individual questions, I was getting them right. So I did not feel that I'm going in the wrong direction. But the moment I started solving 700 level questions, hard questions basically, where I did not know which rule to apply or which error to look for, I started getting them wrong. How many of you have faced this problem? That when you do individual topics, you get those questions right. But when you do 700 level questions where you don't know where the error is, you get them wrong. How many of you have faced this problem? Let's hear from you. How many of you have faced this problem? Just say a yes or no in the poll. I know I ask a lot of questions, but it keeps you guys engaged as well. That's what we call active learning, guys. Okay, so I do see a decent number of responses coming in. Let's wait for 5 more seconds. All right, so I see 90% of you have faced this. Himanshu says I faced previously 50% time. Okay, so yeah, so many people have faced this. If you're facing this, then let me tell you the core problem. The core problem is when you're learning the concepts, you knew which errors you're looking for, but when you did not know which error to look for, you're not able to identify the error just because you did not have a method in place. There was no common linkage. There was no common linkage between these topics. There was nothing common which is combining all of this. There was no application focus. There was no learning thread. So what should be the right? And that's why most people get stuck in two choices. They think that, okay, it is subjective. Everything is subjective and verbal. So what should be the right learning sequence for SC? So in SC, whenever you're learning all these concepts, you need to focus on something that binds all these things together. And the only thing which binds all these things together is meaning. It's the meaning-based approach. It's the meaning of the sentence. Because every rule in grammar that is created because of a certain logical reason. The only problem with us is we don't try to learn the logical reason. We try to get so involved in definitions or terminologies. We try to understand what is an infinitive, what is a participle, what is a run-on sentence, what is a dangling modifier. GMAT doesn't ask you to qualify things as dangling modifier or infinitive or participle. But the moment you clutter your mind with so many things, you start thinking in a very mechanical fashion. That's not how you're supposed to deal with language. You're supposed to understand the logic behind it. That rule exists for a specific reason. You try to memorize the rule as a rule and an exception to the rule as an exception. But in reality, that exception exists because of a logic. There is a rationale behind that. If you remember the rationale, if you understand the rationale, that exception will no longer be an exception. That will be the rule of thumb. And your life will be so very easy. And that's what changed my approach in verbal, and that's what improved my score in verbal. So meaning is the common thread that binds them all. So focus on learning the meaning-based approach, and that's what we do through our coursework as well. So if you want to improve your verbal in sentence correction, you should first start with meaning focus. You should understand how to get the intended meaning of any given sentence. And you can see we have around 8 hours of module dedicated to that, where we have quizzes, we have short snippets teaching you certain methods, and then specific exercises focused on that so that you are able to understand that. So first thing you should do is learn how to get the meaning of any sentence right, irrespective of any grammar rule. And don't focus on phrases, clauses, all those grammar terms again. Just plain simple logic. And then as a second step, after that, you should learn the logical aspect of each grammar rule. All these concepts that are there in GMAT. And again, there are many more. I couldn't fit everything on the screen, so I've just shown you a little bit. So all these aspects should be learned from a logical aspect, so that when you start thinking about meaning, you're able to apply the concepts, the approach, the method, the rules automatically. So these are 2 steps that you should follow, basically. Okay. So I have a question from Samiksha. It is in private mode, so a lot of you maybe not be able to see it. So I'm just gonna read it out loud. She says, Piyush, sometimes in SC when I am unable to catch the error, I use the splits method. That is by comparing the difference in the options. What should be the approach when you are unable to spot the errors? So Samiksha, if you are relying on splits as a backup, it is okay. But if that backup is happening for every question, then you need to check the meaning. I'm 100% sure if you are not able to spot the errors, that means there is a gap in your logical understanding how you are reading the sentences. So please make sure that you read the explanation of every sentence properly. And in GMAT ways, we break down the sentence also into small chunks. So if there is a 40-word sentence, we would have broken it down into 4 or 5 parts. Ask yourself, when you were reading the sentence for the very first time, mind my words, for the very first time, did you break it at that word where we have broken it in the solution? And if yes, did you understand the meaning of that portion in the same way in the first read itself? And when you move to the second part, did you break the sentence with the second part? Did you combine the information with the first part and understand the meaning in the same way? Trust me, the moment your meaning starts matching with the solution, you will start spotting all the errors. Option choice analysis, you will not need splits. You'll just be picking the right option from the choices. Okay, I hope that helps you, Samiksha. So let's move forward. So similarly for SC, what we said, RC and CR also has to follow a similar approach. For example, in RC, many people just jump into reading books. One student I was speaking to yesterday asked me, I'm just starting my GMAT prep. He just took our subscription yesterday and he was saying that, should I start reading any novel or a newspaper now to improve my RC? I said no, because simple thing. See, if you focus on reading, that will always help you, but you should read right. You should know how to read in the right fashion. That is very important. If you don't know how to read right, whatever time you're spending on reading is basically a waste of exercise, because then what you will start focusing is on speed reading. And that's a mistake that I did. When I started my GMAT prep, I remember every single day I used to take a newspaper with my breakfast, open the opinion section or the editorial section of the paper, and my goal was to read as fast as possible. I used to try and wrap up the entire page in, let's say, first half an hour, then 25 minutes. I started doing speed reading, and that actually was counterproductive, because in GMAT, if you have to do well, you have to understand the context well. So what you need to do is you need to slow down your reading speed so that your comprehension speed can increase. If you increase your reading speed, your comprehension speed will suffer, and that will make a mess out of it. This is something no one told me. Trust me, I have learned from my failures, so I'm telling you what not to do. So please make sure when you start RC also, first, even before going to what is a detailed question, what is an inference question, understand how to read things. And we do that in a very step-by-step fashion. In the beginning, we will, in this model, for example, we will help you understand. If you don't understand something, if you don't understand a word, then how do you use the context to understand the words properly? Then we go to the second part where we say, okay, now let's differentiate between facts and opinions, differentiate between author opinion and other opinions, understand, use the transition words to contextualize things. Then we say, okay, let's understand how to summarize why things are written and not what is written. So we focus on one thing at a time so that you learn how to read. And you can see there's around 8 hours of lesson and exercises just dedicated to this purpose. So very important, guys, that you focus on the right reading style, and then only you go to individual areas. And after that, obviously, you will get to exposed to the different type of questions, proper passages on those and everything. But first thing is how to read should be clear in your mind. Then only everything else will follow. Okay, so learn the right method, guys. All these methods on your screen. We are going to talk about these in this webinar series. So those of you who have not yet registered to it, basically you can register to this webinar series basically, and get access to all the webinars basically. So tomorrow we have a webinar on verbal in this webinar series, which is on sentence correction, verb tenses. Do attend it, and this is going to run for 5 weeks, and we're going to cover almost everything which is there with respect to it. Now let's move to the fine-tuning stage. Now, once you have learned the concepts, the method, and then practiced on different questions, obviously you will be good in few areas, and there could be a few areas in which you are still you still need an improvement. So in the fine-tuning stage, you focus specifically on your weak areas. So what you do is you devote about 60 to 70% of your time on your weak areas, and about rest of the time you divide on general and practice and revision. Now, if you are a GMAT-based student, I would always recommend that when you are entering the fine-tuning stage, take your mentor's advice very seriously. So at GMAT-based, we provide a dedicated mentor to all the students. All our GMAT students would have received an email from support@gmatbase.com within a couple of days of purchase. So make sure that you click on the link which is there in the email and speak to your mentors during your fine-tuning phase. Understand what your weak areas are, where you need to focus and improve, so that you're able to give your energy in the right direction. Okay, so 60 to 70% of your time you should focus on your weak areas, and classify your weak areas into two broad buckets: conceptual gaps and application gaps. In areas where your score is less than 60%, you are conceptually weak. In areas where your score is 60 to 85%, I'm talking about accuracy over here for non-GMAT students. If you are a GMAT student, these areas will anyway be highlighted on your dashboard. In conceptual weaknesses will be in red, and application weaknesses will be in blue for you. Okay, so what you do for conceptual weaknesses is you learn the concepts and formulas again, because it's possible that you have forgot them, or you need a revision of those very quickly. So please go through those again by going through the videos for that respective file, and then learn how to solve questions using the concept booster. And after going through the concept booster, then practice 15 to 20 questions properly. Now for application gaps, you don't need to review the videos again. Just learn how to solve questions methodically. You probably know how to solve questions, but you're not using the right method. So maybe take up the concept booster file again, learn the right method, and then solve about 10 to 15 questions till the time you become comfortable with the method overall. So that is what you should do for these two areas properly. Now on GMAT-based, we have this core weakness analysis engine. So all of this is very smooth on GMAT-based. You just log into your account, go to the quant or the verbal section, and automatically the AI also analyzes the data. There's a lot of data on the bottom which is there. You can analyze it yourself. But the AI also categorizes that, okay, these are your concept weaknesses, these are your practice weaknesses, and this is your timing area. And the best part is it doesn't just tell you which are your weaknesses. At a click of a button on revise, it even creates a short course for you in which you can actually work on your weak areas, the videos from your weak areas right away. And these will only be dedicated to your weak areas, nothing else. So you can see all the topics here are matching with your weak areas. And at a click of a button, you can create a quiz on solidify concepts where you can get the quiz from those areas. And similarly, if you look at all these things, the AI automatically allows you to work on this on the go, and it even gives you the right timing that you should aim for. So if your weakness is like you're in a very weak stage in something, obviously it would require a little more time. So all these complex things are taken into account, but you can even use this feature to kind of improve. Now, another question that I get across a lot is, when do I start timing? Piyush, all the methods that you're telling me might take some extra time, and many people stop using the methods just because they think that, and I talked about this, many people want to do questions very fast. So from day one, their focus goes to timing, which is a bad thing in my opinion, because whenever you are learning a new method, you always take extra time, whether it was driving or swimming or any skill that you develop. Initially, you take up a little more time to get used to it. So if you start timing yourself in that phase, it will actually make a mess. You will never be able to learn it. So in the learning phase, focus on always learning the right method. Do not focus on timing. In the fine-tuning phase, start focusing on timing as well. In that case, you should start looking at timing. For example, if you are actually taking, let's say, 2 minutes 30 seconds to solve a CR question, and you want to bring it down to 2 minutes, in the fine-tuning stage, bring this down to 2 minutes 20 seconds first, then bring it down to 2 minutes 10 seconds, and then bring it down to 2 minutes. So this is what you do in the fine-tuning phase. And why this is important? Because unless you use the right method, even if you start focusing on improving timing, the worst part is you will never be able to improve timing while maintaining the right accuracy, because your method already is incorrect. If your method is incorrect, you can never improve the timing. You always improve timing, even if you're in your professional life. If a project is given to you and you are asked to deliver it fast, you have to improve the method that you are using, okay, and reduce waste in the process. So that's why I'm saying in the learning phase, focus on the method. In the fine-tuning phase, focus on the timing, okay. Then how to improve your weak areas? I already told you this. Now, how to improve your timing? after improving your weak areas, you should focus on areas in which you are taking extra time to solve questions. I've just covered that you should gradually reduce it by reducing by 10 or 15 seconds, being comfortable with the timeline, then reducing it to 10 to 15 seconds further. Okay. Now work with a mentor and data, as I said, in the fine-tuning stage. The mentors will take into account all these factors and help you understand how to go about this. So if you're a GMAT-based student, you will have access to the mentor, do it. If you don't have access, you are not a GMAT-based student, you would like to connect with us, use the link which is shared on the top of the chat. You can schedule a call with our team, understand how we work, understand our mentorship and other programs, and then you can get started with that. So I'm just going to share this link again. So this is something which will help you a lot. Now, the last stage of your prep is mock stage. So what should be a mock strategy? First of all, before taking any mocks, you should know how should you time yourself. Many people don't know that. Many people actually try to save time in the beginning of the test so that they're able to complete the test, which is exactly opposite of what you should be doing. So again, and you should not also be completely focusing on the initial quarter or the second quarter and having no time at all for the last quarter. That is also wrong. So you should know what is the right test taking strategy. And we have a webinar coming in the webinar series on that, where I'm going to take you through the entire process end to end. I'm going to answer every question that you have. So please make sure that you learn about the strategies first. Then in the last stage, and obviously when you are taking mocks, you should have worked on your weaknesses and improved that. If you think that you will move to your mock stage with weaknesses still existing, then it's not the right thing to do. Then you'll end up consuming more and more mocks and you'll still not end up improving your performance. Whenever your performance is not at par with your target score in mocks, you should stop taking mocks. So mocks should only come when you're actually prepared to take it. And if you're working with a mentor, your mentor will also help you understand when you should take a mock test. So in the mock stage, you can take one mock test every 3 to 4 days. And when you do so, focus on analyzing the mock properly. Properly focus on analyzing the mock. See what went right, what went wrong. And in the GMAT platform, you'll have a step-by-step action plan even after the mock is done. And if your score in the mock is 50 to 60 points away from your target score, for example, the target score is 740 and your mock score is 650, then you should stop taking mocks. You should go back to fine-tuning phase, work on it, and decrease the frequency of mock tests. Because if you continue taking mock tests, you'll waste more mocks. So it is very important that you get back on track, improve your skills, and then come to the mock stage again. Okay, so that was all from my side in this session. I tried my best to help you understand how to create a proper action plan, how to go about your studies in a step-by-step fashion. If you have any questions for me, feel free to shoot them to me now. I'm going to be here for 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the questions that you guys have. I'm also available on piyush@gmatviz.com. You can reach out to me on this WhatsApp number as well. But I would prefer if you send an email, because then I and maybe other team members also can look into it and help you respond to the queries that you have, or you can schedule a call with the link which I have shared. If you want to check out our free trial, I'm going to share the link of that as well. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to let me know. And remember to be there for the session tomorrow. It is going to be on verb tenses taken by our subject matter expert, Sunita. That way you will be able to learn from her as well. So I'll wait for 2 minutes to see any questions from you. I'm going to mute myself for a minute. Okay, so I don't still see any question. I hope this session was helpful for you guys. So in case anyone has any questions, please let me know now. I'm going to wait for another 30 seconds. And let me know if you have any questions whatsoever. I'll be happy to take them up. But otherwise, do remember to join the session tomorrow at 7 p.m. On verb tenses, and then the other webinars as well. I hope you found this webinar really helpful, and it should push you in the right direction for your GMAT prep. I tried my best to help you understand from my lessons, from my learnings, about the things that I did right and the things that I did not do right, and what helped other students as well. So Shikhar and A, you will be getting the webinar recording by Monday or Tuesday. This will be uploaded on our YouTube channel, so you can actually go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then you can also get this on your email by Monday or Tuesday. Okay, thank you so much, guys. I'm so happy. I'm so glad that you should you're able to understand how to go about this. A says, I still don't understand how to improve. I'm stuck at verbal 35, verbal 700 overall. Don't worry, A, I'm there to help you. So use the link on the top and schedule a discussion with me. I'm more than happy to discuss with you because in some cases, I need to also get more data points about you. This is basically a session where I've given you overall feedback. So maybe you were not able to relate to some things which were personalized for you. So please connect with me and I will definitely help you understand how to improve from your current score. All the best. Thank you, guys. It was great interacting with you. Have a nice day.